sei que é absurdo pensar hoje, mas ter uma nuvem acoplada ao nosso cérebro poderia ser uma solução muito, muito desejada por mim. A2AI é uma associação nova, uma iniciativa que foi criada pelo meu irmão, e eu sigo pela paixão de tecnologia, por acreditar no futuro, no desenvolvimento.
Quando eu criei a I2AI, a ideia era justamente essa, de colocar essas pessoas que acreditam que a tecnologia pode criar um mundo melhor para conversar, para aprender, para desenhar esse mundo. A gente conversando, empresas de tecnologia com empresas líderes nos seus segmentos, empreendedores com investidores, pesquisadores com os empreendedores, tudo isso pode criar um mundo muito melhor.
Às vezes eu penso na quantidade de mudanças que temos no nosso dia a dia, na quantidade de informações e nas possibilidades incríveis que a tecnologia está trilhando para o nosso futuro.
Eu nunca deixei de olhar para o mundo de tecnologia e ver as novidades acontecendo no mercado. Eu vi a parte de inteligência artificial e nos últimos anos a inteligência artificial começou a ser algo que podia mudar muito a realidade das empresas.
Inteligência artificial é uma tecnologia que dá a capacidade para as máquinas aprenderem como humano.
Ela pode ajudar você a escolher melhores filmes que você gosta, ou pode ajudar os médicos a combaterem mais rapidamente, mais assertivamente o câncer, ou nas empresas reduzir desperdício.
Quando eu olho para o nosso país, vejo que temos muito para avançar, tanto na adoção de tecnologia, como em educação e incentivo às iniciativas de desenvolvimento.
Eu vi a tecnologia se transformar no que ela é hoje. Eu vejo a inteligência artificial e vejo o que ela pode fazer para as empresas. É algo, para mim, fantástico.
Inteligência artificial já é uma realidade. Se você quer acompanhar esse movimento, siga a I2AI, uma associação com o propósito...
A EducaCross é a experiência de aprendizagem que está revolucionando a educação. De maneira ativa, divertida e significativa, foi pensada e desenvolvida para promover a interação entre professores, escola, alunos e famílias. Projetada para a educação infantil e o ensino fundamental 1, oferece experiências variadas a cada ator do processo educacional. Os jogos digitais são instrumentos poderosos para desenvolver o protagonismo do aluno de forma lúdica, significativa e autônoma. Com tecnologia de ponta e inteligência artificial, cada criança aprende no seu melhor ritmo. A EducaCross é reconhecida e premiada pelas maiores instituições do Brasil e também no exterior. Todos os jogos são mapeados pela BNCC e apresentam orientações pedagógicas. O professor acessa um conjunto de jogos semanais que dialogam com seu material didático ao longo do ano escolar, além de informações sobre o desempenho dos alunos em tempo real e contínuo. O professor também pode criar missões para um aluno, grupo ou para a turma toda. Ah, e dá para escolher se as atividades serão em português ou inglês. Os jogos podem ser aplicados em salas de aula, laboratórios de informática, em casa e em horários alternados para escolas de período integral. É ensinar e aprender de maneira tecnológica em qualquer situação. Nossa fábrica de games não para. São milhares de jogos disponíveis e milhares de vidas impactadas. Por meio da plataforma, os gestores têm uma visão geral, com dados detalhados, relatórios individualizados e suporte exclusivo. As famílias podem interagir, acompanhar o desenvolvimento das crianças e incentivar o aprendizado. A EducaCross possui muitos amigos, parceiros e educalovers, todos juntos por uma educação transformadora. Faça como nossas escolas parceiras em todo o Brasil e transforme o ensino e a aprendizagem numa jornada interessante, gamificada, com alunos engajados e motivados. EducaCross, aprendizagem inteligente e divertida.
Bom dia a todos, bem-vindos agora ao terceiro dia da International AI Experience. A gente está muito contente de estar com vocês agora. E a gente vai, antes de começar a entrevista com o Gary Bowles, que é realmente uma honra nossa ele ter aceitado o nosso convite, que vai ser entrevistado pelo Alexandre Del Rey. Mas algumas informações iniciais. Bom, vamos falar um pouquinho da I2AI. Então, é uma entidade, né, que realmente foca realmente a integração do ecossistema de AI no Brasil e também no mundo, né? Então, é um trabalho que já sendo feito já agora há vários anos, né? Onde nós temos essa realmente pegada. O que é importante agora, no próximo slide, você está vendo, realmente o ecossistema que vocês podem ver. Então, nós pensamos nas faculdades, nas empresas, nas startups, nos institutos, né? Institutos de tecnologia e governo. Então, realmente, o nosso objetivo realmente é integrar todo esse ecossistema, né, e ajudar realmente o Brasil nisso, né. Em função disso, nós temos vários tipos de trabalhos ligados a networking, a questão ligada também a comitês e toda a parte de capacitação e conhecimento. Uma das coisas que fazem parte desse todo o nosso trabalho, sem dúvida, são eventos. Nós temos vários tipos de eventos, né? Nós tivemos a participação, tivemos o Summit, tivemos a Maratona, que foi um grande sucesso esse ano, e todas as conexões nós tivemos, e outros que vão acontecer e estão acontecendo, e um especial, realmente um dos mais especiais nossos, justamente a International AI Experience, onde estamos trazendo grandes nomes do mundo em vários temas para serem entrevistados pela gente. Bom, seguindo do NUX Experience, nós vamos ter, então, como a gente está chamando de Experience, nós dividimos em 3 partes. Uma é a entrevista que nós temos agora, com o Gary Bowles, mas antes disso, para ser uma experiência mesmo, qual que é a ideia? Fazer um warm-up. Então, agora, nesse warm-up, o Alexandre Del Rey, que inclusive, acho que é um nome que muita gente conhece, foi fundador da I2AI, tem uma penetração no ecossistema do Brasil, muito trabalho também com nossos colegas internacionais, principalmente em Portugal, vai falar um pouquinho da expectativa dele, que vai ser entrevistar o Gary Bowles, né? E o que ele acha que vai acontecer. Então, isso vai ser mais lógico, como tudo na vida, é tudo muito rápido, uma hora de entrevista. A gente achou por bem fazer no período da tarde, da noite, melhor às 19h30, uma mesa redonda, né? Para realmente discutir, né, para a gente repercutir que foi essa entrevista, que insights foram gerados e tudo mais. Então, a gente convida para complementar essa experiência sobre o tema, realmente, o futuro do trabalho, participarem com a gente realmente dessa mesa redonda. Não poderíamos continuar sem agradecer muito a EducaCross pelo patrocínio, né, desse evento, acho que é fundamental para a gente, e os apoiadores, né? Então, nós temos os nossos linceios, também a Solos e também outros aqui, especialmente o pessoal da PUC de Campinas, né, que realmente está aí, inclusive, participando com 3 salas cheias aí na PUC, para realmente tá com a gente participando. Então, um grande abraço aí para o pessoal da PUC. Hoje, então, nós vamos ter esse processo. Nós temos ainda mais 2, mas fora a nossa sessão de hoje, vamos ter mais 2 sessões. Vamos ter uma amanhã, que é sem dúvida muito importante para a gente, e o tema ética, né, que ele permeia todo o processo da parte de AI e todo o ecossistema hoje ligado à inovação. Então, não percam a entrevista amanhã, a mesa redonda. E na sexta-feira vai ter um tema mais técnico, que é a questão realmente falando muito mais da parte ligada do AI, agora na parte mais técnica, né? E o que a gente quer agora é ouvir um pouco o Alexandre Del Rey para falar qual que é a sua expectativa, Del Rey, em relação a essa entrevista, o que você espera, né? E o que você poderia falar, de repente, para preparar o pessoal para essa entrevista tão importante para a gente, que é com o Gary Bowles.
Jeff, pô, que prazer estar aqui com vocês, cara. Que legal essa entrevista com Gary Bowles. Olha que tema, né? Futuro do trabalho. Eu sou professor, sou consultor. Eu fico pensando, e aí, como vai ser o meu trabalho? Será que vai rolar ser professor no futuro? Como que vai ser esse trabalho do professor no futuro? Essas questões das tecnologias, como que as tecnologias podem nos ajudar? E o trabalho de consultoria vai mudar? Eu vou pedir a consultoria direto para um sistema de inteligência artificial? Então tem tanta coisa acontecendo, meu cara. E esse cara, o Gary Bowles, para quem não conhece, eu vou trazer aqui um passant aqui dele. Acho que é legal trazer alguns pontos importantes. Primeiro, o Gary Bowles, ele é presidente adjunto da Future of Work da Singularity University. Então, tem um tema dentro da Singularity University que é justamente o futuro do trabalho, e ele é expert global em futuro do trabalho, focado justamente em tecnologia, os impactos dessa tecnologia na carreira, na estratégia, nas relações profissionais. E é legal, assim, o cara palestra em mundo todo, em vários lugares. Se for olhar aí, Gary Bowles aí no Brasil, tem muito artigo, muita entrevista sobre ele. Eu acho também legal falar que o Gary Bowles, ele... Vou dar um spoiler aqui, mas vamos conversar com ele depois, né? Mas ele já vou dar um spoiler que ele fala, pô, inteligência artificial generativa, IA, não vai acabar com o emprego. Ela sozinha, né? Não é acabou para nós, ela sozinha. Isso vai ser um ponto que a gente tem que debater, discutir, tem que fazer escolhas, né? A gente pode manter um mundo melhor até no trabalho, como foi com várias outras ferramentas. Agora a gente tem que perceber que isso vai ter impacto no nosso emprego, vai ter impacto em como a gente toma a decisão, vai ter impacto em vários aspectos, e ele fala muito sobre isso. Então, um baita cara que vai falar sobre isso. O Gary Bowles, ele é um autor renomado. Se você quiser ver aí, se você quiser entender mais um pouco do trabalho dele, aí, Jeff, tem 2 livros aqui, né? Na verdade, um livro que é o mais recente, vou falar dele especialmente, chamado The Next Rules of Work, no inglês, né? No português, As Próximas Regras do Trabalho, já está publicado nos 2 idiomas. Esse livro fala muito sobre o futuro do trabalho, explora muito os insights dele, então quer saber mais detalhes, recomendo a obra dele. Ele é uma autoridade no assunto, tem várias publicações, não apenas essa. Ele tem livros, tem artigos, e eu acho que é legal. Gostou do tema? É um autor que eu acho, Jeff, que vale a pena a gente pesquisar, vale a pena a gente trazer mais. Não sei se você tem acompanhado um pouco dessa discussão, Jeff. Você tem visto aí esse tema? O tema é um tema super quente, né, meu cara?
Isso que eu ia comentar com você, né? O Gary Bowles já está falando em transformação digital há muito tempo, né? Já há anos. Quer dizer, a questão do AI é uma cereja a mais no bolo para discutir isso, né? E também eu acho a expectativa, né, que é um processo de transformação que vai ser contínuo, lógico, né? E que a gente tem que pensar em nós mesmos, quer dizer, como a gente vai gerir isso. Eu acho que minha expectativa é que ele fale bastante disso. Olha, a tecnologia, tem essa tecnologia, vão ter outras, mas o centro tem que ser a pessoa, né? Como você, né, vai ter que gerir isso, que não tem como não, e acho que é muito legal, porque é um estudo que ele está fazendo há muito tempo, né? E eu acho que ele vai gerar bastante insights. Por isso que eu estou muito interessado depois, né, de tarde, como a gente vai discutir isso, né? E a gente vai atentamente ver sua entrevista, né? Tentar captar o máximo possível que você vai tirar dessa entrevista, para a gente esmiuçar um pouco mais tanto a questão do desafio da tecnologia, grande desafio para nós, para as habilidades e para as empresas, né? Claro, a gente não pode realmente a organização empresa, né, é totalmente ligada à questão do trabalho. Então, acho que são essas vertentes que vão trabalhar e realmente acho que vai ser um momento especial para a gente.
Eu acho que vai ser muito especial, até porque, assim, eu tenho uma filha pequena de 4 anos, a Jeff, não sei se você sabe. E uma das questões é falar, o que ela vai ser quando crescer, né? A gente já tinha essa dificuldade, eu vejo aí, tem muitos colegas aí da PUC que estão nos assistindo, colegas de várias... Tem gente que está preocupado e fala, eu estou terminando a minha carreira profissional, que eu acho que é um engano, porque lifelong, né? Primeira palavra do lifelong learning é a vida vai ser mais longa, tá, pessoal? A gente está criando tecnologias que vão aumentar a vida, a gente vai ter provavelmente mais de uma carreira, a gente vai querer fazer coisas que nós nos sintamos úteis, né? Então, Quem está achando que está se aposentando, vale a pena repensar, falar essas tecnologias podem me ajudar a fazer novas coisas, né? Agora tem aquelas pessoas que estão no meio da carreira. Então, cara, e aí? Eu aprendi tanta coisa, gastei tanta energia para aprender. Aí vem o lifelong learning, a aprendizagem. Aí, por que eu vou continuar precisando aprender? Essa ideia de falar, me formei, acabou, ideia ultrapassada. E também essa questão de a gente estar disposto a aprender. Eu vou depois trazer alguns pontos do Gary, mas eu acho que é legal trazer esses elementos antecipadamente aqui, porque será que eu vou estar disposto a aprender? Eu tenho a mentalidade adequada para falar, olha, o que eu sei agora me trouxe até aqui, e o que vai me levar daqui para frente não necessariamente eu já sei, eu vou ter que aprender coisas novas. E tem quem está começando a carreira, quem está lá na PUC, ou minha filha que nem começou a carreira, tem um trabalho grande ainda. Essas pessoas estão num outro desafio de falar, e aí, como vai ser esse futuro? O trabalho, como será a característica do trabalho? O trabalho, a gente teve um período onde uma boa parte da população, né, trabalhava, e uma pequena parte eram aquelas pessoas que tinham o poder, que tinham a riqueza, né? Até o começo da Idade Média, assim, né? Nós tínhamos muito essa situação, né? Você tinha as pessoas que eram os donos, os reis, e os vassalos, trabalhavam. Depois teve a lógica do negócio. O negócio, aquelas pessoas que enriqueceram negando o ócio, negando o lazer. Olha que maluquice. E o Gary Bowles, voltando a falar desse cara, vamos entrevistar ele aqui, pô. Eu me sinto obrigado, Jeff, pelo convite. Pô, me sinto super honrado de estar aqui com esse medalhão do futuro do trabalho. Esse é um trabalho legal, né? Quando a i2AI traz gente do peso de Gary Bowles aqui para trazer, para conversar aqui numa conversa entre colegas, gente que está olhando para a inteligência artificial, eu acho muito bacana. E nesse aspecto, eu acho que tem duas coisas que eu quero trazer do Gary Bowles para a gente terminar esse esquenta e depois trazer ele diretamente, né? Porque nada melhor do que ouvir dele diretamente. Agora, eu acho que ele traz essas questões de uma maneira tão bacana. Ele fala sobre a necessidade de uma nova mentalidade, chama mindset, mas não só uma nova mentalidade, uma nova quantidade de skill sets, de habilidades, né? De habilidades, muitas dessas habilidades humanas, e também toolsets, as ferramentas. Aí vem a inteligência artificial, ferramenta de trabalho, ferramentas que vão trazer superpoderes para nós humanos. E essa questão da aprendizagem contínua, da aprendizagem ao longo da vida, elas são cruciais do ponto de vista dele. Então, nós estamos falando de lifelong learning, não dá mais para parar. Não, já sei. Você sabe agora, você está aprendendo agora, amanhã vai aprender mais, depois de amanhã vai aprender mais. Então, essa mentalidade, a mentalidade do crescimento, aí, do growth mindset da Carol Dweck. A Carol Dweck tem um livro fantástico que fala do mindset, a importância disso. A gente precisa estar aberto. Novas possibilidades, novas oportunidades. Isso é um ponto que eu acho que é crucial da conversa dele. Eu quero ouvir mais sobre esses aspectos. E tem um lado fundamental, duas palavrinhas mágicas que eu trouxe aqui, que eu acho que ele vai abordar, né, que eu sei que ele aborda no trabalho dele. Uma é liderança. Papel do bom líder em ajudar aos membros de uma equipe a entender essa mudança, a entender o que está acontecendo e a entender o propósito do trabalho em si. Cara, isso está mudando. A gente precisa repensar. Eu vejo ainda muita gente perdida. E nós precisamos cada vez mais de liderança que ajude a gente a falar, olha, como vai ser o futuro? Porque quando a gente fica perdido, não tem um propósito. É outra palavrinha mágica, né? Liderança tem a questão do propósito. Quando a gente não encontra propósito no trabalho, quando a gente não sabe exatamente o que a gente está buscando, qual que é a nossa visão, o que a gente quer com tudo aquilo, cara, a gente se sente perdido. Fala, mas por que eu estou fazendo tudo isso? Qual é a lógica de estar aqui? E essas duas palavrinhas juntas, né, o propósito como um guia para a gente poder entender essa dinâmica, falar, mas os humanos são necessários, aonde eles são necessários? A inteligência artificial está trazendo novas possibilidades, será que ela vai conseguir tirar de nós a humanidade ou será que ela vai dar à humanidade uma oportunidade real de sermos mais humanos, de podermos trabalhar de uma maneira mais apaixonada, fazendo o que gosta e tendo para o trabalho menos interessante, mais repetitivo, uma super máquina para nos ajudar, né? Então, acho que o Gary Bowles, ele explora muito o sistema de liderança, propósito, nas suas palestras. Ele fala essa questão, né, de nós estamos aqui interconectados. Estamos conectados à I2AI, conectando vários pontos aqui no Brasil, trazendo essa conexão de temas globais com profissionais globais. Olha que bacana tudo isso, né, Jeff? E tudo isso é incrível, é incrível. Então, eu estou muito feliz de ter o Gary aqui com a gente, viu, Jeff? E eu estou animado com a entrevista de poder estar compartilhando com ele. E vou dar umas dicas antes de a gente chamar aqui. O Gary está já nos bastidores, está aqui se preparando. Nós começamos com ele próximo da meio-dia aí. Então, dicas para vocês aí, ó. Aproveita que você está aí, ele está aqui ao vivo. Tem pergunta? Cara, tem pergunta que eu queria fazer para ele. A gente ajuda, que eu estou aqui também no chat. Estou aqui olhando um pouco do chat. A Gisele, que está nos bastidores. Nem sei se podia falar o nome dela. A Gisele está aqui no bastidores. Gente, caguetei aqui. Te falei, desculpa, mas falei que está aqui no bastidores com a gente, né, Jeff? Ela vai passando a gente aqui as perguntas. A gente está aqui antenado em você aí do outro lado, né? Então, tendo perguntas legais, passam para a gente coloca aqui para o Gary, traz aqui em tempo real. Então, é uma oportunidade, né? Jeff, quer falar os últimos pontos aí da sua reflexão antes de a gente começar?
Não, até para fazer uma ligação, né? Porque a gente está falando do trabalho, né? E uma coisa que tem muito a ver com isso é a questão da educação, né? Que é uma coisa fundamental. E essa discussão foi bastante interessante ontem também com o Jordan, né? E uma coisa que me levou, porque a gente assim, muito preocupado com a AI, né? Mas essa preocupação, você falou das crianças, né? A gente está tendo hoje com o smartphone, né? Quer dizer, quantas crianças você vê aí, né? Que estão ali ligadas no smartphone, não tira tal. Quer dizer, essa preocupação nossa, o AI, inclusive, ele pode ser, né? E acho que essa é a grande discussão. Ele pode ser um problema, mas um grande ganho. Quer dizer, de repente, o que ele está vendo lá, você pode ter um processo que vai ser lúdico para ele, que ele quer ver, né? Mas ele está adicionado para a educação também, né? E hoje, por exemplo, a criança não tem. Eu acho que isso é uma das coisas que acho que é uma dor muito grande, não sei se você concorda hoje, né? Que você dá um smartphone para a criança e você, de repente, não sabe o que ela está olhando, se tem a qualidade, se isso tem algum teor, né, também pedagógico, né? E eu acho que... E a questão do trabalho, eu acho fundamental, e até eu li acho que foi o Marco Tass, que vi uma entrevista dele, que ele pensou, tem países já nórdicos que a criança já no pré já está trabalhando isso, né? Para a criança já saber, né? Já saber, inclusive, como lidar com as coisas, já lidar, né, como fazer a pergunta correta, como assim, realmente começar a ter situações difíceis, né? Porque o risco da tecnologia é a gente achar que tudo é fácil, né? E ao contrário, né? A complexidade é cada vez maior, né? E aí tem que ter preparado para isso, né? Então, claro que tem muito que ele vai falar, é muito mais quem já está dentro do ambiente de trabalho, né? E quem é estudante, né? Mas tem todo um trabalho aí da molecada que está vindo, né?
Ótimo, não, ótimos pontos, Jeff. Assim, primeiro, é muito legal a entrevista de ontem, e a mesa redonda sobre educação foi um baita tema. Quem não assistiu, tem aí, está disponível aí no nosso canal no YouTube. Então, acho que é uma boa dica, né, Jeff? E além da conversa de hoje, que nós vamos começar daqui a pouquinho com o Gary, acho que é bom lembrar que à noite nós temos ainda... Vai ter o caldinho especial de toda essa conversa, né? O Jeff vai moderar essa mesa redonda que eu vou participar. Vai estar a Camila Brasil Gonçalves Campos. É muito bacana. O Dr. Philip Zimmermann, que eu conheço pessoalmente, o trabalho que ele faz de pesquisa do futuro do trabalho. Ele que é alemão, fala português, então vai ser um bate-papo em português muito legal. O Samuel Rufino, que é um pesquisador de mão cheia na parte de tecnologia, trabalha com quântica aí, muito bacana. O Patrick de Azevedo Ferreira, tem empreendedor muito bacana. O Reginaldo Gotardo, cara, CEO, fundador da EducaCross. EducaCross que tem feito um trabalho justamente na linha que o nosso patrocinador, EducaCross, mas o Reginaldo, ele fez um trabalho incrível de trabalhar inteligência artificial com educação. Essa combinação super poderosa traz muito resultado. É muito legal ver o impacto que essa combinação traz nas escolas. Você vê o trabalho da EducaCross, que tem virado quase viral, o trabalho da EducaCross, que a escola conhece, aprende, vai se espalhando aí num monte de escolas ao longo do país aí, e você acaba falando, que legal, né? Que legal você juntar tecnologia, educação. Isso pode ser, como o Jeff bem colocou, podemos ter um caminho virtuoso nesse sentido. Só que isso não vem de graça, isso não vem sem esforço, isso não vem sem essa necessidade de articulação, de combinação. E essa conversa é muito importante. Essa conversa é muito importante. Muito bom.
O que eu sugeria, viu? Uma coisa que eu pensei aqui, é um bom exercício para quem está, porque com certeza ele vai falar, como você falou, quais são os skills necessários, quais, né, são as ferramentas. É legal cada um aí, de repente, pôr no papel aí, mas que skills que eu acho que são necessários, né? E o que eu acho? Para até bater, peraí, o que ele está falando, né? Eu quando li o livro, né, o livro está aqui, né? Acho que é bem legal, exatamente o livro da história aqui fica ruim aqui na coisa, né? As próximas do trabalho, então tem muita coisa lá, e daí você começa a ver, então, peraí, isso também é uma coisa que é um valor para mim também, né? Porque eu acho que também os valores, assim, e o que você acha que é importante, né, para novas regras, muita coisa você já tem, porque nós estamos aí nessa transformação digital há muito tempo, né? E já sabemos muita coisa que tem para se adaptar à tecnologia, como utilizar a tecnologia. Então, eu acho que é bem legal isso, da gente refletir, né, fazer uma reflexão do que a gente acha importante, e ouvir o Gary do que ele vai falar, né? O quanto está próximo de você, porque às vezes está muito próximo, alguma coisinha a mais que você tem que tomar uma atenção maior.
Muito bom. Eu quero ouvir também, acho que tem esse lado, né? A gente primeiro fica com tanto medo que acho que não tem como, e tem como, né, Jeff? Tem muito como. Tem um esforço, mas ao mesmo tempo também pode ter uma recompensa enorme de a gente fazer esse pequeno esforço. Mas não é esse esforço que as pessoas acreditam e falam, não, tem que... Nossa! Na verdade, essas novas tecnologias estão cada vez mais democráticas. E isso é muito legal, né? Você deu para ouvir, né? Eu falei que as tecnologias estão cada vez mais democráticas, acessíveis para mais gente. Muito bom.
Então, daqui minutos...
Estamos lá, preparados. Não sei se...
a gente conversou com... Inclusive, é até interessante o Gary, que ele entrou um pouquinho antes, 11h30 também, né? Daí a gente comentou com ele, olha, nós vamos estar em português, fica à vontade, né? Daí ele falou, não, tudo bem, eu volto às 12 horas. Então ele está ali, né, estourando aí. A Gisele, assim que ele entrar, ela vai por ele já na roda aqui. Vamos aguardar um pouco. E a questão, inclusive, eu acho que é legal, não sei se o Gary... Vai falar ou explorar. O que é interessante é que a questão da carreira dele já vem de longa data. Hi, Gary. How are you?
Bom dia.
Bom dia.
Hi, Gary. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Same for me.
We have a wonderful warm-up to hear you. So now, Alexandre, you will start the interview with you. So again, it would be a pleasure for me, for everybody, and interesting. We have the university, Catholic University here. They have a week of gathering from the Polytechnica, from the engineers teams, and they have three rooms full of students hear you in the university there.
That's wonderful. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I look forward to returning to your marvelous country as soon as possible.
Great. So, Gary is yours.
Gary, first of all, thank you for your time to be here with us. It's a great pleasure to know more about your work, about your thoughts. This is a very hot topic here in worldwide, in Brazil as well. could not be different, because we have so many transformation in this period. The digital transformation is huge. Artificial intelligence is coming. Before starting, first I would like to introduce you properly, because I was jumping into the discussion. But first of all, for those that doesn't know yet, Gary Bowles is a renowned figure and co-chair for the future of work at Singularity University, specializing in the convergence of technology, work, and education. He's a global expert on future of work, trends, and also organizational learning. Gary has authored numerous insightful articles and he is a distinguished speaker, motivating global audience to navigate the evolving work landscape that is still evolving. His innovative thoughts and deep insights make him a guiding light in understanding and adapting to the transformative impact of technology in our professional lives, simplifying the intricacies and the difficulties of the future of work with clarity and especially elegance. I like a lot your thoughts, Gary. It's always good to hear and to be here with you about this topic. I don't know. Perhaps we could start talking about how did you end surveying, looking for this topic? What made you expert on this topic? What motivated you in the past?
Yeah, absolutely. So first off, thank you so much for the great opportunity to be able to explore some of the ideas in this arena. I heard a little bit of the previous discussion, and I have to say I would love it if you would introduce me from now on for every single talk, because clearly you had a great perspective on a number of the things I like to talk about, especially lifelong learning. And I've got some history to tell you a little bit about that. But to just give you sort of the threads that sort of contribute to today, I was actually trained as a career counselor, helping people to navigate career change when I was 19 years old. So you can imagine if especially the students, and maybe some of the students listening are 19 years old, but if you can imagine at that age, being exposed to techniques that help adults to go through significant pivots, changes in their lives. And you hear about them doing work they really didn't enjoy very much, and then they want to do other work that really motivates and inspires them. What would you take away as a 19-year-old? You should do what you love. But as Dean Kamen, the inventor of the Segway, is fond of saying, his father's advice to him was, do what you love, but do it so well that people have to pay you for it. So that's a really important part of the learning that I got. And I found what I really loved at the time was technology. So I moved to Silicon Valley a few years later, and very early in Silicon Valley. And even though I thought, this computer thing was sort of a fad, it wasn't gonna last, but I thought, well, I'll just try it. And so I've worn about every hat you can wear in Silicon Valley, from company executive, serial entrepreneur, sometimes parallel entrepreneur. And then increasingly more and more of the work that I did was focused on, first off, on helping people to understand the seismic changes we go through. So I became the editor of 6 different technology magazines, 5 of which I co-founded. And then that sort of changed and shifted to how we come together around these issues in conferences and strategic events, much like this one. And so I became a co-producer of quite a number of gatherings, and a lot of my work ended up being with Singularity University, which is a global platform for people who like to think about the future of exponential technologies. I'm actually here in Miami because we have something called Camp Singularity, which is a gathering of people in a much more relaxed sort of environment. And then next week I'll be teaching at one of our executive programs in Silicon Valley. So if you weave those threads together, what happened over and over again, people were trying to deal with a world of exponential change. And so I came to be writing and lecturing much more about the future of work, the future of learning, and increasingly, because this is how we channel our human energies, the future of the organization. And I've tried at various points to help people to understand when we hit these pivot points in our lives, in our economies. We hit these big, what I call resets, great resets. How we as humans continually navigate a world of exponential change is really important. So just to give you an example, back in March of 2020, I don't know if anybody remembers that far back, but back in March of 2020, I wrote an article, Welcome to the Great Reset, talking about the global pandemic. And what I said in that article is, today it's a global pandemic. Tomorrow it might be, I don't know, artificial general intelligence. So I think most would say, there's obviously a lot of discussion about this, whether or not we've achieved that or not. But generally, the idea was we have these waves of change, and what my motivation is to try to help people to be able to navigate them. And now that we are in the midst of what I call the AI tsunami, increasingly people want strategies for how to be able to navigate that constantly changing landscape.
Okay, and this AI tsunami, I like it. I like the name because it's really look like that we have a tsunami of a new technology that is changing many things. I would like that if you could help us to explore more about what means this AI tsunami, what means all these AI-related technologies, these new AI generative technologies, these old ones that yet are not fully explored, like machine learning, the classical machine learning, this cognitive architecture that we have more and more new kinds of AIs. How this would change the shape of the work as we know it? Why people are so concerned with this?
Yeah. So let me just give you a little bit of framing, and then I'll talk about specifically the impacts of work. So I often show pictures of waves, of waves of change. So we had a global recession, and then we had a global pandemic, and then now we have the AI tsunami. So the reason I call it a tsunami is because I go back to a lot of the work I did in technology was even before the internet was really broadly accessible. And as a matter of fact, I started a magazine in 1994 that was the internet's first newspaper, Interactive Week. And that infrastructure took years. It's been 30 years for all those pieces to fall into place. The reason that the pace and the scale, that is the speed and the extent at which the new tools are being adopted by people, happens because of that existing internet infrastructure. So for instance, you get 100 million people using ChatGPT in just 2 months after its release because the internet is there. So what I'm fond of saying is this is just like the internet was, only it's on internet time. Because that infrastructure is in place, because we have the computing infrastructure, we got the computing power, we've got the communications infrastructure, we've got the application program interfaces, the APIs that allow programs to use programs. All of those pieces enable independent innovation by so many different people, and they accelerate each other. So that's why it's a tsunami. Every month, there are 75 to 150 releases of new versions of software, new products. That's a tsunami. So now how does that impact work? Well, what happens is automation has always affected work. About 40% of Brazil's economy is dependent upon agriculture. But it's so much of that infrastructure is automated. You've got automated tractors, and we think back to the plow. The plow really impacted human work. You didn't have to till the field anymore with your hands. And now John Deere has an autonomous tractor guided by satellites. That's going to change work too. Here's the problem is if this is the amount of human skills, like all the things that humans can do, and this is the amount of work that's available, what we do in our linear human minds is we say, wait a minute, here's all the human skills, here's all the people who could be working, and here's all the work. Wait a minute, AI is going to shrink this, and now there's not going to be enough work for humans. And that has been the response with many different waves of technology. With the internet, we all said, oh, wait a minute, there's going to be all these jobs that are going to evaporate. And the truth is, many jobs did evaporate. In the media business that I was in, about 50% of all the jobs that existed 30 years ago are gone. But far more jobs were created, more work was created in new media and new alternatives. And so this is the most basic concern that people are talking about, is that they think the amount of work is going to shrink. That's not what history says. What history says is we take the plow and we can do more work. We take the artificial intelligence programs, that's a big bin to throw an awful lot of different kinds of technologies into, but we'll just go with it. We'll just call it AI. We take all those technologies and now we think about, all right, so yes, they're going to automate a lot of different work tasks, and they can power people to develop their own superpowers and to be able to solve problems that they had never even encountered before.
And this really, I would say that this perception of what could happen while the future is being shaping is kind of a feeling of despair or frustration or uncertainty or many other possibilities. This I think what makes people stressful, because right now we are inside a movement, a tsunami, as you said, with this combination of us, so many technologies together, giving us a very powerful and rapid pace for this change. And we don't have time enough for thinking, time enough to get used with that, and new things are coming. This is, I think, a big challenge for all of us. And in this sense of looking for how we could manage this speed, this amount of change that you called, well called it as a tsunami, how are possible paths for the future? I would like that we could explore a little bit more these different possibilities. There is some possibilities that I think that could be more in a bad direction, that we would become frustrated, or at least prefer not to choose this path. And there are others that could lead us for a bright future with many nice things. And perhaps there is some place in between that. Could you help us to think about, or to use your reflections to think about this possibility, the path of a negative path, what could be at worst, or what could be at the best, and what could be a way to go in the middle of that, that perhaps would be more realistic? I don't know.
Okay. All right. So, no, very good question. So first off, let me just give you a couple different scenarios, and then let me tell you how I think we get the best scenario, or the best under the circumstances. So if you go back to what I was talking about, in my book, which was recently translated into Portuguese, I talk about 3 futures of work, right? And they're all scenarios. There's lots of different scenarios. Just watch a couple of science fiction movies and you'll get a few more. But basically, if you buy this premise, so there's one scenario where exactly what I was saying is technology sort of shrinks the amount of work, and then there's a lot of people that are out of work. So that's one scenario, and none of us like that, I hope. That's not a good scenario. There's another scenario where the technology does exactly the opposite. There is so much new work, there's not even enough humans to do it. And so that's we can think of that as an abundance scenario, where the technology unlocks a huge amount of new work and new problems to solve and new value. And then there's a third scenario where we get both. Well, how can you have both? How can there be sort of less work, but more work? And the answer is, this is the way that big resets in technology happen all the time, is there's a skill set that is needed to be able to solve problems in a certain era. Back before this thing called the automobile, the skill set was to grow horses and take care of horses and ride horses. And then along comes this internal combustion engine. Oh, it's a new skill set. And so the people who were doing buggy whips and taking care of horses had to either develop that new skill set or they didn't have access to work. And so this is really what has happened. It's actually the speed that the technologies are adopted and how work changes that is all based on the decisions of humans. So here's how we get the most beneficial scenario. Automation, especially artificial intelligence, machine learning, generative AI, large language models, all the above, they don't take away jobs. It just doesn't happen. They automate tasks. They take things that humans were doing, like coming up with new ideas for an article that you might write, or drawing a sketch that might become a painting, or they take things that we have done and then they automate those tasks. Well, what happens in jobs is jobs are just a bunch of tasks that we perform. And somebody that is paying us is making a decision. Do we want you to keep doing that job, human? Will you keep doing all those tasks? Or am I going to go get some automation to do it? So if you are on a call center desk and you're continually answering questions that people have when they call in for tech support, and then suddenly your company now uses software to be able to answer the phone and answer a lot of questions, that company might just train you to go do other work, and then everything is fine. Or that company might decide, nope, you don't have a job anymore. You don't have the skills that we need, and they're not going to train you for it. So robots and software don't take jobs. They just automate tasks. It's a human's decision if a job goes away, and we can make different decisions. We can actually continually help the people who were doing the previous work, train them so that they can be able to have the skills and to be able to leverage the tool set of these new technologies to be able to solve new problems.
This is a great point. No, that's makes it's a great insights here, Gary. And can I call you Gary?
Absolutely. I hope you
Okay.
you must.
There is, I think, a special difference in related to what happened in the past, because in the past I had the impression that the amount of tasks that could be replaced by automation was happening more slowly, that we have more time to say, oh, okay, this amount of tasks, I need to retrain, I need to reskill myself to learn it. I have this possibility to have time and have the willing for doing so. And now the amount of tasks that compound a job that could be automated or could be affected or could be replaced or whatever in the sense, is changing very fast. And the way to get to learn these new skills, these new abilities, this new knowledge, it's not so fast. I don't know if you could do it faster. Perhaps we could, and I would like to hear about you.
Sure.
What your research in this field, and also to discuss a little bit about this difference of the speed of change. Could you give us some enlightenment or some thoughts about these ideas?
So you have actually hit on the core problem, which is, I say the way that human minds work is, we, believe it or not, we're fairly linear problem solvers. We see an event and another event and another event, and we draw a straight line. But so much of the change that you're talking about actually follows exponential curves. If I had told you 15 years ago that you were going to have this thing that you couldn't live your life without, that you had to carry around with you everywhere you went, 15 years ago, you would have said, no, I don't want the thing. There's no technology I want to be dependent upon like that. And yet we all have your digital distraction device. We all have the thing. And so, but it's taken 15 years for us to now all have the thing. And so you hit the nail on the head. It's the pace and the scale of change. It's how fast change happens and how many people it affects. If the pace was slower and it affected a lot of people, well, okay, we all would adjust. If the pace was fast, but it only affected a small number of people, well, okay, so they might be disrupted, but everybody else is okay. It's the pace and scale of the change that we're going through right now, and the delta between how that change happens and the human capacity for continually adapting. All right, so you're exactly right. This is an AI tsunami. There's a whole set of tools that are affecting so many different kinds of work. My friends who are freelance writers, freelance graphic artists, freelance photographers are freaking out, and appropriately so, because their clients can decide, hey, you know what? Midjourney is just good enough. I don't need to go do a photo shoot. Or ChatGPT or Claude 2 is just good enough. I don't need you to write that ad copy anymore. And so there are always canaries in the coal mine. That is, there are always work roles that are most susceptible to those new technologies. And with the internet, believe it or not, it was the media business. So when I started the magazine Interactive Week, we were basically chronicling the death of our industry, or rather the reinvention of our own industry. But there always are canaries in the coal mine. And so the answer is, what is unique about this time is that in some ways like the internet, but especially with these tools, the tools are impacting a lot of work, but the tools can also be used to help us to be able to develop new skills more rapidly, to be able to understand our own skills, to be able to understand the kinds of skills that will be needed, to be able to help us, I don't use the word upskill, but to continually develop new skills and hone our existing skills so that we can solve new problems. A lot of the research, and remember, this is very new. I mean, ChatGPT, the beginning of the tsunami, we all acknowledge was probably, the release of ChatGPT 3.0. And so that was just last November. I mean, so we're still figuring it out. We're still doing the research, but the research so far shows that actually the people with less training in a lot of different fields they get more benefit out of the tools than the people with more training. That is, if you've got lots of training in being able to solve certain problems or do certain, develop code, write code, you're only going to get a little bit of help from the tools. It might make you, 10 to 20% more productive or more effective in your work. But if you have less training, you get this leapfrog effect. Okay, so wait a minute. That's a great opportunity. We can help people who didn't develop all that much skill in a particular arena, and we can supercharge them. We can give them superpowers. And so long as that human that is paying them sees that opportunity and wants them to be able to develop those skills and leverage these tools, then you get much, much better match in the workforce, and we don't have to worry about disruption. We just have to worry about helping those humans to make the adjustment.
Okay, and this is very, very interesting. I do believe as well of the power of these new technologies to help us to jump the gap of skills that we need to jump, because not only walking through the gap, we need to jump it because it's so fast that we need to get some speed on it. Great discussion, Gary. And I would like now to address another kind of question about human relevance, because we are talking about replacement of tasks, and there is jobs that could be replaced. And I would like to discuss a little bit more about, in your perspective, how we humans keep our relevance in the daily cognitive tasks or other tasks, perhaps not only the cognitive tasks, but how we could keep our uniqueness, if it's possible to be unique in comparison with artificial intelligence and other technologies. How we can do it? What is your thoughts about how human can be distinctive and different than these technologies that are coming?
Yeah. No, excellent question. So there's a well-known phrase, we shape our tools and then our tools shape us. And that comes from a completely different quote that Winston Churchill said years ago about cities. But it works pretty well with the AI tsunami, because again, this is pretty new, especially generative AI and large language models are us. That is, the data that they're trained on is data that we created. So what it reflects back to us in many cases, what are often called stochastic parrots, that is the way that the algorithms are sifting all this information that we humans created and reflecting it back to us in words and pictures and ultimately in video. That is us. That is, it's just sort of taking what we've done and sort of reshaping it and then giving it back to us. And so we are relevant in that it's content that we created. What is different is that the algorithms are not. It doesn't require a human at the helm. You're not driving. You're feeding it a whole bunch of information, and you right now we drive it to some extent with things like queries, but the technology will change. It'll be much more. It already is starting to be more conversational. There's a couple of things that we need as anchors. The first is that we need to have a continuous dialogue, and each of us needs to have the reflection where we think about what it is that makes us human. That's critical because we're going to start to see more and more technologies that seem to emulate what we do as humans. And we have this characteristic, a cognitive bias in our heads, that we tend to anthropomorphize. We tend to see something and we say in our heads, how is it like humans? And then we start eventually to treat it like it's something that's human. We talk to our cats and our dogs. We look up at the clouds and we think we see bunny rabbits. We tend to adjust the things around us and we tend to put our human stamp on them. Well, it's pretty easy to put your human stamp on a piece of technology that's talking to you like a human. And so we need to start, especially with training our young people, to be able to be intelligent consumers of these technologies and these media, because it's only going to get more blurry in the future. So that's the first thing I'd suggest as an anchor. We have to have an opinion about what makes us human, what makes us unique, because the lines will be blurry. The second is, and I know I have lost this battle from the beginning, but I'm just going to go ahead and state what I think is the obvious, which is that we have a tendency as humans to think of our technologies or want to describe our technologies as being our equal. We want to call artificial intelligence programs cobots. Or personal assistants or that sort of thing. We anthropomorphize them and we raise them up. So if humans are here and our technologies are here, like the plow is down here. I don't think we think the plow is all that intelligent, but we start to raise up these artificial intelligence technologies. I think that lowers humans. I don't think that's beneficial for us. So I will continue to fight the battle that says it's not our equal. We're not collaborating with AI. It doesn't work like that. It's our tools, but we will increasingly as humans use labels and a mindset that starts to treat the technology as more and more having this sort of more human aspect to it. And that's something I think we need to continually have an anchor, a personal opinion, each of us. And we need to understand that the people who are designing the software, I'm not trying to shame anybody, but they are intentionally hacking our brains so that we will actually think of it as being more human-like. ChatGPT, a lot of the Gen AI programs didn't have to make it look like a chat. It didn't have to look like that. It could be a totally different interface, but our brains are being hacked in the way that we are interacting with the software to think that it's more like a human conversation or querying a human or asking a human to do a certain thing. And that's not a bad thing if we as humans always are clear that it's a piece of technology. And it's not a bad thing if there's lots and lots of innovation from lots of different sources. Where it has a potential negative impact on humanity is if we start to, in our minds, allow the technology to replace humans, so we don't think we need those humans anymore. For instance, we don't need friends anymore. Hey, I've got my AI girlfriend or boyfriend or significant other. I don't need to be around real humans. I've got something that sounds an awful lot like a real human. And if we just continually replace a lot of the elements, a lot of the pieces that we've had in our lives that are anchored with real humans, that's a risk to society and to each of us as individuals. And if we allow a lot of the innovation to be in just a few hands, Microsoft, Amazon, Google are all investing in the leading companies that are changing the landscape of artificial intelligence. And that actually is not good for us as humans either. It's not good for our economies. It's not good for our societies to have a lot of innovation in just a few hands. So we need to all reward new innovators from completely different sources so that we don't just keep on giving more and more of our lives over to just a few companies.
Great thoughts, Gary. It's because of that, I was honored to be here with you, because this kind of reflections are really valuable insights for us. The audience are also happy with this discussion here. I see some comments.
Oh, good.
Before I open to the main audience, and if you have a question for our dear Gary Bowles here, please put it in the chat. We are at 10. Looking for it, and we are going to bring these questions for you. I like this last part of it. I really believe that sometimes we just look for the results of the tasks, or we like even to be pretended by these kind of tools, because it's impressive how we can be, how can I say, encharmed by such a technology.
Yeah, that's a great word. That's a great word. Yeah.
You mentioned people that prefer to discuss with a chat that are programmed to be always according to your opinion, to answer exactly what you want to hear. And sometimes this is even disturbing, because why you want to have a companion that is exactly like you and just agree with you or talk about things that you love without learning, without improving, without reflecting. And this is a really a great discussion that everybody should do your own reflection about it. Yeah. This is a great point. And Gary, I would like to explore, we talk about scenarios there, and I would like to come to two different possibilities. The first one, probably you follow this letter from Future of Life Institute about a giant pause for AI, and they are saying that it's a dangerous thing what we're doing, and ask for stopping. And people very well known researchers, some polemic people also joined the endorsement of this letter, and we have all this kind of a discussion on that time. I think that was 6 months ago, kind of it. And do you see really a risk of for the humanity in the usage of this kind of tools in the daily work?
No, excellent question. So I actually signed the letter, and I'll tell you why. So I didn't think anybody was going to pause. I didn't think that's what's going to come from the letter. What I wanted to do, and what I've been doing in my writings, I have a LinkedIn newsletter, and I've done a 6-part series on AI. I'll continue to do a lot of coverage of the different, I call it facets of the diamond, from impact on work, impact on learning, impact on our economies. But what is really, really important is I've grown up in Silicon Valley. I first moved to Silicon Valley 40 years ago. And so I know a lot of the thinking of a lot of the innovators that you read about all the time. I've had conversations with them. I know the way that they think, and they're incredible innovators. What is not as common is that they stay anchored in what the potential negative impacts of the technologies they create. The phrase that is used in Silicon Valley is negative externalities. That is, here I am, I'm innovating, I'm creating a social media platform. Oh, yes, people are shaming each other and they're having food problems, and they're having weight problems, and they're depressed, and those aren't my problems. I just created this social media platform, and all those negative things that happen, it's not my fault. Well, what's different with these technologies is there are tremendous ripple effects, tremendous impacts by these technologies, which the creators don't even understand themselves. When you understand the dynamics of hallucinations and unanticipated responses or behaviors, what that risk is that there's a whole bunch of things going on underneath the covers that the people creating the technologies are not in control of and wouldn't know how to turn off. Now, I'm not talking about, all the science fiction-y, Skynet stuff. What I'm talking about is these ripple effects, these impacts on our societies and our economies that the creators of the technologies are not in control of. Or if they're in control of them, they don't want to put guardrails around them. So the reason I signed the letter is because it's very important for us all to hit the reset button. It's not stopping. I don't think we're going to stop. What we need to do is we need to change our behavior. We need to change our mindset. We need to change the way that we are anchoring our decisions based in values that benefit humans in societies and in economies. And don't just, back to our previous point, concentrate a lot of those benefits into just a few hands and then treat those negative things that can happen, like people losing jobs, like, continually having this erosion of our connections to each other as human beings because we depend so much on our technologies. All of those are impacts that we need to understand. We need to understand what happens to intellectual property rights in this era. We need to understand what happens when software starts to create software. And if we don't have control over the initial software that created it, we're definitely not going to have control over the software that it creates, with all sorts of potential negative consequences. And so I'm not trying to, sound like, the Chicken Little myth, of the sky is falling. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we're creating a new sky. That is, we are creating a new world where these technologies are fueling a whole bunch of different things that we don't understand. Let's all have processes in place. Let's have regulations. Let's have continuous dialogue. Let's have the kinds of investment capital that wants to encourage a lot of different innovation from a lot of different sources. And if we do all those things, we'll be in much better shape for the ultimate impacts on our societies and our economies.
Great points, and it glad me to see how many new initiatives talking about ethics, about governance, talk about discussions that what we do, how we guide these tools in order that they can provide a better future, not a worse future for us humans. And it's not given per se. We need to work, we need to put effort, we need to put discussions on it in order to achieve this governance, to achieve this right future, the future that we could be proud of. Say we could build a better future, not use technologies that are very, powerful in performance, but we didn't take care of how we use this performance to make a better future for us. Yeah. And talking about better future, Gary, I would like to explore a different kind of scenario. One of the dialogues that I think that was one of the most exciting of the center was a dialogue with Elon Musk and Jack Ma. Jack Ma is the founders of Alibaba. Elon Musk, founder of many other companies. And Jack Ma has a positioning about the future of work that was very interesting, at least for my point of view. He said, why we are so concerned to have work to do we can do much other things with our open time, with our time. We don't need to work all the time. And I remember if you study a little bit about the history, the first industrial revolution create the possibility that we have the daily work of 8 hours per day, the weekend as a kind of general law of working in many countries. Yeah, and I don't know, how do you see this possibility of the future of non-work, the future of what we do with our time, with our effort? Do you see it as a possibility? How it would affect the work itself and the future of work?
So I have tremendous respect for Mr. Ma, and a good amount of respect for, well, I guess some of the things that Mr. Musk has done. But I completely disagree with the framing, and I'll tell you why. So almost 100 years ago, there was a very influential economist by the name of John Kenneth Galbraith, and he wrote a very influential article called Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. And he said exactly what Mr. Ma said 100 years ago, 1930, almost 100 years. And he said, our technologies are amazing. Look at all the different things that automate all the tasks that people used to do. We have tractors, we have cars, we've got all these amazing exponential technologies. What our grandchildren are not going to have to work. So we better start thinking right now about how they're going to deal with all that leisure time. I don't know about you. I don't have an awful lot of leisure time. Unless I work and somebody pays me for it. Now, Mr. Ma, he doesn't have to work anymore. You know, he's got a lot of money. I normally don't hear this argument from people that don't have a lot of money. I don't have people that have less money saying, what am I going to do with my time? I'm going to stop working 3 jobs. I'm only going to work 2 jobs. You know, that's not, I don't hear that. So here's the thing is there's a great line by Bruce Sterling, the science fiction author. And he says, the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. So here you and I hope the students are all having these amazing conversations about artificial intelligence. And there's people around the world have never even heard of ChatGPT, never played with it. So the future is already here. It's just not evenly distributed. Peter Diamandis, who is one of the co-founders of Singularity University, he wrote a great book called Abundance. And he talks about abundance mindset, which is really, really important. We all need to have it. My framing is we already have abundance. It's just not evenly distributed. So there is so much money and resources concentrated in a very tiny number of hands in our world. There's lots and lots of people with lots and lots of money and a lot more, few number of people with lots of money and lots of people with very little money or much less money. And so because that's not evenly distributed, so long as the benefits of those technologies are spread evenly to others. Think about if when Travis Kalanick started Uber, he had given stock to his drivers. What if he had that kind of abundance? Rather than continually pushing down the amount of money that they pay the drivers, what if you gave them stock in the company and then everybody benefited? So here is the challenge and opportunity for our time is for most people, it's not that there's more leisure time unless you have the resources that allow you to have leisure time. It's that we have not evenly distributed the abundance that we've been able to create with our technologies. And I'll just give you one very glaring example. In the United States, when the global pandemic hit, I don't know if anybody can remember back to March of 2020, but in March of 2020 in the United States, we went from 3.7% unemployment to 13.2% unemployment in 3 weeks. Now, that wasn't because of technology. It was because of a pandemic. But we just laid off a whole bunch of people thinking, oh, I don't know what the future brings. And in Germany, where they have laws that keep people employed, they only went from 5.1% to 5.7% unemployment. So they still had jobs. They didn't have leisure time. They still had jobs. They were still being paid. So how can we design economies? How can we design the processes by which these technologies empower each of us as individuals? And then we have that free time where we don't have to go do work that we get compensated for. The answer is not many economies have solved that yet. There aren't that many economies in the world that have solved the disparity, the inequity of the way that abundance is currently distributed. That is solvable, but it is not currently something that a lot of the people, for instance, the Jack Ma's of the world, are thinking about or doing specific actions about. They might talk about it, but Sam Altman at OpenAI talks a lot about this, but I don't see him distributing his stock to a whole bunch of people whose jobs are being impacted by it.
Great answer, great point of reflection. Perhaps the problem is not about abundance anymore, but the talk is about distribution. How we make better distribution for the abundance that we already have. Great point, Gary. And before we finish this talk, we could spend hours, days here because it's so exciting. At least for our point of view here, it's a great pleasure to be with you with all these thoughts. There is some questions from the audience here. I have two of them that I would like to bring to you, Gary. The first one is a discussion about the usage of the technology among kids, children, how these devices, these new technologies are changing the way that the children's, the kids learn or behave themselves.
Yeah. So first off, my wife and I have one son. He's 27 years old. And I don't know if you call it lucky, but we certainly benefited because a lot of the technologies we now accept as being common were only just really developing when he was young. So I can't possibly criticize parents in this era because parenting is always hard. I think it's especially hard in this era, but I'll give you a couple of ideas. So first off, all the research is very, very clear. If we spend a lot of the time and energy in helping kids to develop social and emotional skills when they are young, they will be much better adults. It's just going to happen. You help them to be able to interact with each other, to collaborate with each other, to do problem solving with each other, to be able to control their own emotions, and to be able to manage their own emotions, and to be able to really double down on being human with each other. All of that will pay great dividends later on. But if we allow our kids to have unlimited screen time, if we're walking around staring at our digital distraction machines all day long, then the kids get the message that that's what you do when you're an adult. This is how you're gonna live your life. It's going to be this is going to be the between you and everything else, including others that you deal with. And so we have to change that calculus. We have to reinforce with kids that you can put the screen down. You can interact with each other. You can go out and play. There's all sorts of things you can be doing where you don't need to have technology be the interpreter or the interpolator between you. And so that's critical for us, or else we're not going to like the things we're going to have to deal with when those kids become adults. And we're already seeing some of the challenges, especially with the impacts of some of the shutdowns during the global pandemic. So we have to have a huge focus on helping kids to learn social emotional learning when they're young. And then with the technologies, we need to help them understand it is a tool set. I talk a lot about mindset, skill set, and tool set. It's a tool. These technologies are just tools. And the more we can help the kids to understand how they can leverage those tools to be able to solve problems that they've never encountered before, the better they're going to be able to solve the problems for the future.
Great point. Great discussion. I have another question here. I think this is from Wilson Stefano. His question is AI able to begin with best practice of what to do or best practice management business processes. I do believe that he's talking about if AI could help us to begin with. And if no,
absolutely.
the AI will be suboptimal utilization. Is it correct?
Yeah. So good question, Wilson. So one of the groups that I've helped to catalyze is called Next Collabs. We have a group of experts from around the world that are all very up to date on the latest artificial intelligence and especially the Gen AI programs. And so we do 3 times a week, we do these workshops and get together so everybody can stay up to speed on them. And we focus a lot on workflows and business processes because it turns out that we have, as humans, we've gone through a set of steps when we go to solve a problem, when we go to create a new ad, or we're going to write a new article, or we're going to collaborate together to come up with our next product. There's a lot of processes where these new technologies can be extremely helpful, and we can actually use them to be able to develop new processes or to speed existing processes. So the answer is, as long as we are treating them as ways to generate the first draft or a list of ideas that we as humans can filter, things seem to go pretty well. So long as there's a human that is at the helm, that's at the driver's wheel, that takes the information that the software provides to them and then filters it, decide what works, decide what doesn't, things go pretty well. It's where we think, or we might assume, that the technology knows what it's talking about. It's got access to the world's information. So why would it lie to us? Or why would it give us an inefficient business process? That's where things go off the rails. So Wilson, my suggestion is to always be thinking about how we can leverage these technologies to increase the effectiveness of business processes, speed the way that we are solving problems, but we always make sure that there is a human touch at key checkpoints along the way so that we are filtering it to ensure it's the most beneficial for us.
Great, Gary. I think that we have time for one more question here from the audience. And the question is, what is your message for the students that are in this session?
So first off, you live in amazing times. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a student at this point where these technologies suddenly are unlocking so many different opportunities and so many ways to be able to create new value. I want to encourage you for one thing that I have just found, because I've come to mentor a lot of young people around the world. I'm known typically by 2 different labels. I'm either called Professor Gary or I'm called Uncle G. So if you are 25 or under, I'm often called Uncle G. So when I talk to young people around the world, I will say, all right, so this is your Uncle G talking. What is it that will be most helpful to you as you go through the various phases of your life, and especially with work, and especially with using these tools? What I find is the mindset that I encourage is that you continually look for ways to be able to have a Southern Cross or a North Star in your life and your work. What is it that you are motivated by? What is it that you're passionate about? What is it that drives your curiosity? As long as you've got that in your life, there's always something that is pulling you towards the next kinds of problems that you can solve. And these tools, especially the artificial intelligence tools, are helping you to do that. That's when I've found people say that they have the kind of life where they're thriving. So continually look for ways you can have that thesis, that idea, that curiosity, or that passion for what pulls you forward. And if these tools can help you to be able to figure that out, to be able to help you to become a better problem solver, to be able to continually be exposed to new ideas and new opportunities, that's a life where you can thrive.
Oh, great answer. We have there is questions coming all the time. I see that there is the possibility for one more. I think this is
okay. Sure,
one, perhaps.
Let's do it.
Mateus Carita is asking, could AI help countries with low birth rates, such as Japan, to fill their lack of workforce? So
absolutely, Mattels. So yes, absolutely. That's a great insight. What we need to be thinking about is what are called workforce mismatches. That is, there's demand, there's workforce need, there's problems to be solved, as I was saying, and not enough human skills to solve them. What we need to do is, yes, there's no question you can leverage a lot of these tools in specific industries. It's probably about 40% of work roles that actually can be really benefited by these technologies. What we need to do is we need to also be training young people, also be creating the processes by which young people come from other countries and other places to be able to take that work and to be able to solve those problems. This is in a lot of countries around the world. Australia is dealing, especially its East Coast, is dealing with a big mismatch around the hospitality industry. There's a lot of these kinds of problems where there's a mismatch. There's demand for work, but there isn't the trained workforce to do it. And that is definitely a place where these tools can be helpful.
Great, Gary. Thank you once again for your time. It was a pleasure to be here. I would like to come to your final remarks, your goodbye words here for our audience, please.
Okay. I'm just going to come back to what I call the three legs of the stool for dealing with exponential change. So you and I talked about the pace and the scale of change. How do we continually deal with that? Because today it's generative AI. Tomorrow, it might be quantum computing that blows away every password in the world. So there's these waves of change are going to keep on coming. So how can we continually navigate these? Those three legs of the stool: mindset, skill set, tool set. Mindset, continually have the belief that you can be a growing and changing person, and you can have that Southern Cross or North Star. Skill set, continually use these technologies to help you to develop new skills and solve new problems. And then tool set, remember, these are just technologies. These are your tools. They're like pens or plows. They're things that help you as a human to be able to solve the problems of tomorrow.
Gary, great finishing of your insights here, your talk. Was a great pleasure to be here with you. Thank you again for your time, for your insightful talk with us today. And I would like also to invite everybody that is in our audience. In the evening, we have at 7:30 p.m. We are going to have a round table in Portuguese for those that like to keep this discussion in our native language here. And we are going to have many other experts discussing about this afternoon here with Gary. We are going to discuss about these topics, about these insights, about it didn't end here. We are going to come back to these topics that Gary bring to us in the evening, and we can participate as well. It will be a pleasure to be with you again. Gary, thank you for your time. Thank you for your discussion. And we are going to, unfortunately, get to our end of this interview. See you the next time.
All right. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you all in person, but I hope you have a great time this evening, and be well.